son sent out 2 men from Acacia Grove to spy secretly, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." So they went and came to the house of a harlot named Rahab and lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, "Men have come here tonight from the children of Israel to search out the country." So the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out the country." The woman took the 2 men and hid them. So she said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it happened as the gate was being shut, it was dark, that the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue after them quickly, for you may overtake them." With the Lord prayer. Heavenly Father, this morning hour, we just ask that you would give guidance and direction as we open your word. Ask, Father, that you would get honor and glory for your name, and help us to just join and rejoice in the way that you work things together for our good and your glory. For it's in Jesus' name. Amen. Looking at chapter 1, just a few verses above there. Verse 12 of Joshua chapter 1. Reubenites, Gadites, and the tribe of Manasseh, half of the tribe of Manasseh, came to Joshua. This goes back to Numbers 32. In Numbers 32, while Moses was still alive, the Gadites and the Reubenites had seen something of the land. At least they saw a parcel of land that looked real good to them. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh that came to Moses came because they were herders. Not sheep herders, but oxen, cows. And so they, the land over there, apparently, I haven't seen it visually, but they tell me, that it is flatter and fertile and good pasture ground. Whereas on the other side, where the Israelites are about to go, on the other side of Jordan, the land is rocky, the land is hilly, it's uneven, and it's good for goats and sheep, but not necessarily for cows. And so they have a particular interest in wanting to stay. Now the problem is, and there's always a catch, when you have people asking for a particular special need, they have a catch. And the catch Moses was eyeballing is, 40 years ago, I sent a group of men into the land to spy out the land. And as those 12 men went into the land to spy out the land, they came back with a report. All of them agreed. It's great. There's food. There's shelter. And lots of it. And we can make a living there. But we can't. And Moses is shocked in amazement. He's standing there flat-footed. You ever have somebody go to do something for you? You expect them to come and bring a good report. And they say, "Well, I know you wanted us to do this, but it can't work. It won't work." And start putting it, and you feel deflated. Moses just sank when the 10 said, "God can't even take those people out of the land. And we can't take or move those people out of the land." They were so convinced in their heart and in their mind of their inadequacy, their inability, their crushed spirit, that they had an impact on all of the children of Israel. If our leaders, if those 10 guys can't get their head wrapped around going into the land, how can we follow them? How can we do this? How can we pursue it? And they backed up, and they backed up. Well, it questions and reasons why, and all kinds of obstacles. And they said, no, we'll wait. And God was angry because their heart was not fully settled in that our God is able to deliver us. Unbelief. I want you to wrap your heads around a couple of passages of Scripture that are in the Scriptures. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. How many of you know Proverbs 3, 5, and 6? Made that a life verse. You've heard it, memorized it, underlined it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Israel standing on this side of Jordan, looking at that side of Jordan, and Gad and Reuben and Manasseh come to Joshua and say, let us stay here. And his mind went back because he was one of the two who came with the good report. We can go. God has promised. And let's do it now before it's too late. And Joshua, as he looked at Reuben and Gad and Manasseh, his mind went back to just a few weeks ago when these same fellows came to Moses before he died and asked if they could stay on this side. And Moses was concerned that if they stayed on this side of Jordan and didn't go to that side of Jordan, the whole nation would sink. The whole nation's going to swallow that. If it's good enough for these guys, we can stay here too. And Moses said, no, you've got to go over. You've got to take possession of your possessions. Moses pounded that into Reuben and Gad and Manasseh back in Numbers 32. You can read it this afternoon. And Moses 3 times repeats the same. If you want to stay here with your families and your flocks and your herds, you must agree and you must not hinder, but you must go over with the nation, all the others, your brothers, take them over the Jordan, go before them, lead them into battle, and when they are safely entrenched, when they have their possession, then you can come back and settle on your side. 3 times. Only if you promise not to wait. We're going to set you at the front. You're the point man. In a military group, in a squad, in a patrol, when you go out on patrol, when you go out on to invade the beaches, they send the first group is the point man. The point man goes out and watches for, they tell me that particularly in Vietnam, the point man had to look for all kinds of little enemy tricks, hanging wires and covered branches that covered all kinds of ugly little things in the ground, and they had to clear all the obstacles out of the way so that the rest of the men could come forward safely. And so Reuben and Gad and Manasseh said, we will arm ourselves. We are going with our brethren, and we will go before them. We'll take point and lead them into battle. And when they are safely on the other side, then we'll come back to take our possession. There it is, Joshua chapter 1, verse 12. Look here. Remember the word which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is giving you rest and is giving you this land. Who is responsible for this transaction?
God.
Who's responsible? God is giving you the land. It's God. Put your trust in the Lord. It's His battle. The battle is not ours. The battle is the Lord's. The Lord your God is giving you the rest and giving you the land. Your wives and your little ones, your livestock shall remain in the land which Moses gave you on this side. And it's quite a bit of land. It's all the land that was once King Sihon and King Og. They were the Amorites and the Moabites. So everything on this side, what today is the nation Jordan, was given to three: Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. Stretched. Lots of pasture land. Beautiful. So much. And so all they had to do was to remember their promise to go forward. But you shall pass before your brethren, armed all your mighty men of valor, and help them until the Lord has given your brethren rest as He gave you, and they also have taken possession of the land which the Lord your God is giving them. And then you shall return to the land of your possession and enjoy it, which Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you on this side of the Jordan toward the sunrise. Now that's out of Numbers 32. Moses made the deal. Reuben, Gad, Manasseh agreed. Now Joshua. Question: who is on the Lord's side? Moses raised that way back in the book of Exodus 32. Who is on the Lord's side? Because the nation as a whole, in Exodus 32, before they got very far out of the land of Egypt, hadn't gone into or over the wilderness, still around Mount Sinai, had already in unbelief traded faith in God for faith in idols. In Exodus 32, the nation had created those golden calves that they saw all over Egypt, and they pined for the golden calves, that they could see their gods and their idols. And as they turned away from faith in God, their heart carried them into all kinds of immorality. And we've gone through a transition in our country. It seems like it started way back in the 60s, and it probably started way back further than that. They're trading faith in God for faith in anything else, or faith in nothing else. Hebrews chapter 11. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The give them rest, give them the land, and give them peace, and give them victory. And God counted it his responsibility to provide for his people. There is, if you will, just hold your place here in Joshua and scoot back there to the New Testament book of Hebrews for just a moment. Hebrews chapter 11 sets up a heritage, a tradition of individuals, men and women of Israel, who kept faith in God, who trusted in the Lord and acknowledged him and pursued him. Now, if you will, come down to verse 5. By faith, Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death, and was not found because God had taken him. For behold, he had a testimony. He that was taken had this testimony that he pleased God. Now that would be a fantastic testimony. Wouldn't that be if men and women talked about Enoch and said, Brother Enoch, now that's a guy I want to know. He enjoys pleasing God. He sets his heart and mind. He gets up in the morning to sing praises to God. He starts his day in prayer and he pursues God all day long. What is the will of God here? What is the will of God? What is God's, what has he said? What has he revealed to us? What does he want? And Enoch said, God first, others second, and myself last. He had this testimony that he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please God. You see the relationship? The two are so intimately bound together. If you trust in the Lord, that pleases God. Enoch trusted in God and it pleased God. He had this testimony. Enoch pleased God. He trusted in him. He believed in him. He exercised faith. He went to God in prayer. Without that faith, without that kind of faith that reaches out and hangs on God, without him, I would be nothing. And without him, I'd surely fail. But as we hang on to God, as we trust in him, as we pursue him, as we seek his face, notice what happens. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is God, and there is no other. And not only is he God, but he's the rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Not passively, not accidentally, not unconsciously, but diligently seek him. It's the task of life to reach out and see where God is leading and follow him. Joshua is at this juncture. Brethren, we're about to pass over. Who's on God's side? Who trusts in the Lord? Who believes in him? Who's ready to exercise faith? Take a step on that direction. And they were hesitant. I mean, these guys had made vows. All that you say we will do. They had committed themselves to this thing. They were obligated by their own promise, their own word, their own sacred honor, their own vow. Joshua reminds them again, the task that lies before you. Reuben was the oldest of the 12 brothers. Reuben snuck in and sinned against his father. Gad, Manasseh isn't one of the 12 brothers. Manasseh is one of Joseph's 2 sons. He's the older brother, but he's not the one who got the lion's share. Jacob took Joseph's 2 sons, and Manasseh was the older, and Ephraim was the younger. He switched them. He gave Ephraim the older brother's share, the firstborn. And we just have to. I only have one brother, and that was more than I could do. I'm glad I was the older, and he made life challenging for me. We don't often get together anymore, but he lives in Michigan and I live down here. If you don't make plans and purpose something, it doesn't get done. If you don't purpose to pursue God, it's not going to get done. If you don't purpose to exercise the gift of God in you, it's not going to get done. You have to purpose in your heart to serve the living God, to do the will of God, to trust in God. When Joshua brought these men back, this is now the 3rd, 4th, maybe the 5th time he's reminded them their responsibility. Go over before your brethren and lead them into the conquest, in the crisis, in the conflicts, until the Lord has given your brethren their rest. And after that, you can come back here and take possession of the land which the Lord your God is giving them. And then you shall return to the land of your possession and enjoy it, which Moses the Lord's servant gave you on this side of Jordan toward the sunrise. So they answered Joshua, saying, all that you command us, we will do. And wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we heeded Moses in all these things, so we will heed you. Only the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Joshua is asking again in front of all Israel, who's on the Lord's side? Who will go against the foe? And they're saying, yeah, we're here. We're ready. Where are you, Joshua? As long as you do as God commanded you, as long as you follow Moses, as long as God is with you as God was with Moses, as long as you lift up the banner of righteousness over us. As long as you lift up the power of God and the grace of God and the wonders of God, we will pursue. But if we think that you're slacking or turning away or gone astray, then you'll have to win us back. Whoever rebels against your command and does not heed your words in all that you command them, he shall be put to death. Only be strong, Joshua. Be strong and of good courage. Now Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men out from the acacia grove. How many of you still have King James Bible? Still reading in the King James, okay? What's the word there? It's a kind of a tree, shittim. A shittim tree. It's the same stuff that they used to make the ark and all the stuff as part of the tabernacle, acacia, shittim. And here, looking at the Jordan River and Mount Nebo and all of this side, looking at the sun setting on that side, out of this grove of trees, this orchard, if you will, or woods of acacia trees, looking out that way, Joshua had his tent right there in the front of and he called 2 men. Now he wasn't going to send 10 men and have, or 12, and have 2 guys come back with a good report. I'm sending 2. I expect 2 men to come back with a good report. He cutting his, shaving it off there. So look at what he says. Go in secretly. Go in carefully, shy. Follow the cover of rocks and trees and hills. Go in quietly and view the land, especially Jericho. When God took Moses up on the top of Mount Nebo and he said, look out, he took him up there for a reason. From that vantage, he could see all far, far away. Up on Mount Nebo, looking down, he had a perspective of the land. There's a place down in West Virginia called Davis, West Virginia. And there is a place called Canaan Valley. And then there's this rock hill. And you wind around through the woods. And it's kind of steep. I mean, it's a good exercise getting to the top, but you don't see any rocks. You're just going through the woods, up the little dirt trail, and everything's hunky-dory, and all of a sudden it breaks out. Trees stop. The road stops. The rocks are there. You move a little closer to the rocks, and it's straight down. And you're a mile up in the air, looking down. Talk about a view. It was thrilling. It was exciting because some of these characters were trying to go up the face, the rock face. Instead of using the trail, dummy, go around. But they were going up the rock face. God looking down on his creation. Back in what was then 1900 BC. In 1900 BC, his friend Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt. Joseph may have been 60, maybe 70 years old, threescore and 20 years, threescore and 10. He passed away in about 1850 BC. And from that time, for 400 years, Israel was slaves in the land of Egypt. And time pursues, and I've got a Bible, a Ryrie Study Bible, and in the back of this Ryrie Study Bible, there's a sequence of events, and it's got the timeline, and it shows Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, the time frame. And Egypt kept good calendars. And so these are close and accurate times of events throughout the Old Testament. Before Christ, some 1,400 years before Christ, Moses was leading the people out of the promise, out of the slavery in Egypt, as God promised Abraham. Abraham, 400 years, your people are going to be slaves in the land. Now, 1440, Moses is leading them out of slavery and back to the land. Now, there was a problem. Genesis chapter 15 explains why they were going to be held up. God says, because the sin of the Amorite, the transgressions of the Amorite, hasn't been fulfilled, completed. God has some kind of a bucket or a measure. He says, when this bucket is full of all the sins of the Amorite are going to be judged. I hope he doesn't do that about us. You got Sanders, you got so much, and when you hit that last one, off you go. Now, and we don't know when that last one's coming. You know? God keeps that to himself. Days and times. I'm not sure that's how it works. But that is how it worked for the Amorites. God, Genesis chapter 15, Abraham, when their sins are full, then I'll bring the judgment on the Amorite and bring the people back into the land. So here we are. Not. You can mark right up there across Joshua in your Bible. About 1400 BC. And that was when, how many of you heard of King Tut? King Tutmos? I think that's the one that was king at that point in time, Pharaoh of Egypt. Or pretty close, one way or the other. He wasn't too far away. So, here we go. Go into the land, and especially Jericho. Joshua was already persuaded that battle number one, the first thing we have to do is take Jericho. We take Jericho, the next one falls, and the next one, and the next one. But we start here and now at Jericho. And he sends these two men into the land to Rahab's. Rahab runs a public house. And it's a place where fellas can go for a meal, or they don't have a Holiday Inn. They don't have Motel 6. Not around. But they had a public house. And Rahab was the runner of the public house. It was her. It calls her the harlot. Rahab, the harlot. She runs a public house. And so, if you're two strangers in a strange place, the only place to blend in and and not be out of place is in a public house where all kinds of folks have come to find refuge in the night. So they came there to lodge that night. Verse 2 was told to the king of Jericho, saying, some men have come here tonight, and they are Israelites. I don't know that they wore name tags and badges, or if they had to show their birth certificate, passports. I don't know how they knew where these two fellows came from, but they knew and were sure that they were Israelites. So they came in that night, and these fellows, the secret is already blown. You know, the surprise attack is not going to happen. These fellows are here to search out the land. They know the whole plan. Everything's all in. Their story is out. Rahab begins to take charge. But Rahab's got to deal with the king. And one of the things about Rahab, not only is she a harlot, you know where her name keeps cropping up, popping up in the Bible? Her name is right there in Matthew chapter 1, in the line of King David. Before King David, Rahab the harlot. Her name's there. She's got another friend, Tamar. Tamar is also a harlot. Her name is in that. And Bathsheba, her name is in that. See, the Bible doesn't necessarily whitewash all the warts and blemishes. It shows us for what we really are. The Bible that wasn't afraid to call Rahab a harlot because she was. God knew who she was. God wasn't afraid to have her touch him. Come demonstrate grace with her. God is not afraid of sin, but takes our sin and sets us free. God who's not afraid of who we are and knows exactly what we are, sinners in need of grace, knew that when Rahab decided she was going to save these men, she decided she was going to have to fool the king. She's going to have to make him believe something that wasn't true. And so she developed a lie. Notice what she says. The king of Jericho sent to Rahab, bring out the men who come to you and have entered into your house. For they have come to search out all the country. Then the woman took the two men. She took them upstairs in her house, up on the roof. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know that they were where they were from. She lies. She lies like a rug. I didn't know they were. How was I to know? I didn't ask them. Verse 5, it happened as the gate was being shut, when it was dark, that the men went out. She lies. Stabs that knife right in his back. She lies all over. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue after them quickly, you may overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order on the roof. When she laid things in order, just happened that there were two guys laying underneath. And then she laid them out. She covered them up and buried them up under the roof, under the flax. the harvest was coming in and there was supply, the men pursued them by the road to the Jordan, to the fords, and as soon as those who pursued them had gone out, they shut the gate. Now before they lay down, she came back, and she came up on the roof, and she said to the men, now this is where it gets interesting. I know that the Lord has given you the land. I know that God has given you the land that I live in, and that the terror of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea. When did that happen? That's been 40 years ago when they were on the other side of the wilderness, before the spies went out. They were just coming out of Egypt, and God dried up the water and brought them across the Red Sea. Their faith wasn't in dried up streams. Their faith wasn't in water out of rocks. Their faith wasn't in bread, manna that came up every day. Her faith wasn't in the quail that heaped up along the wilderness. Her faith, the God who is able to do those things. The God who did those things is the God that will do this thing and give you the land. God has demonstrated his hand, his power in times past and often in different ways. But those are just things that show the hand of God, the power of God. Our faith is not in those things that God will move mountains, but that God is able to move mountains. My God is able to do exceeding abundant above all we can ask of him. A wonder-working God. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, I thank you this morning for your word, and for this demonstration of your great power and grace. Bind our hearts together. Give us faith to walk with you day by day and trust you to do exceeding abundant above all we can ever ask with you, and know that you are able to deliver us from the sins in our past and all that is